Memphis, Tennessee, October 14, 1993. The Fairview Elementary School sat on the corner of Elvis Presley Boulevard and McLemore Avenue in South Memphis, 3 blocks from a gas station that had been closed since 1987, and 4 blocks from a church whose marquee had read "God hears every note" for as long as anyone on the block could remember. It was a 2-story brick building, the kind that had been built in the early 1950s with the particular civic optimism of that era: solid, plain, meant to last. The brickwork had darkened over the decades. The gymnasium roof had been patched twice. The boiler made a sound in winter that the custodian, Mr. Earl, described as the building clearing its throat, which was as accurate a description as any. Inside, the hallway smelled of chalk dust and floor wax, and the particular institutional warmth of a building that has held children for 40 years. Hand-painted murals ran along the lower walls, a timeline of Memphis history that a previous art class had made in 1981 and that nobody had updated since. Beale Street, the river, a cotton field rendered in the flat, earnest style of 10-year-olds doing their best, W.C. Handy with his trumpet. A notation that said "birthplace of the blues" in careful block letters, underlined twice. The music room was at the end of the second-floor hallway, past the library and the room where the copy machine lived. It was not a large room. 22 chairs arranged in a rough semicircle. An upright piano against the far wall that had been tuned as recently as 1989. A cabinet full of recorders, tambourines, a xylophone with 2 missing bars, and a single acoustic guitar that had been donated by a parent in 1988 and had been used exactly 4 times since. On the walls, a poster of Beethoven, a poster of Louis Armstrong, a hand-lettered poster that said "Music is the language of the soul" in blue marker, slightly crooked. This was where Margaret Ellis had taught music for 11 years. She was 44 years old, originally from Clarksdale, the daughter of a man who had played harmonica at church socials and a mother who had sung in the choir for 30 years. She had a music education degree from Tennessee State and a classroom manner that combined absolute patience with the kind of quiet authority that children recognize and do not test. She loved her job with the specific love of someone who has chosen their work carefully and found that it has chosen them back. She was sitting at the upright piano on the afternoon of October 14th, running 8th-grade scales with a group of 9-year-olds who were trying very hard, when the door opened and Principal Howard Briggs walked in. Briggs was 51, a trim man with wire-rimmed glasses and the particular manner of someone who has delivered difficult news many times and developed a face for it, not unkind, but sealed. He taught himself to stand with his hands clasped behind his back when the news was administrative. They were clasped now. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, "could I speak with you for a moment?" She looked at him over the heads of her students. She recognized the hands. "Marcus," she said to the boy at the xylophone, "keep the tempo steady. Everyone, scales again from the top." She stood and walked to the doorway. In the hallway, Briggs spoke quietly. The district had completed its mid-year budget review. The numbers had not cooperated. Several programs were being restructured. He was very sorry. He knew how much the program meant to her and to the students. Margaret Ellis looked at him for a moment. "When?" she said. "End of this semester," he said. "December." She looked at the door of the music room. Through its small rectangular window she could see her students, 8 and 9 and 10 years old, small hands on instruments, concentrating with that particular wholeness that children bring to things they are not yet self-conscious about. Marcus at the xylophone, his tongue between his teeth. A girl named Destiny on the recorder, eyes closed. 2 boys sharing the acoustic guitar, one holding the neck, one strumming, neither complaining about the arrangement. "These children," Margaret said, "some of them don't have anything else." Briggs looked at his shoes. He said what administrators say when they agree but cannot change what they agree about. She went back into the room and finished the class. She did not tell them. She would tell them when she had to and not before. She played the piano while they played their instruments, and she smiled at Marcus when he finally found the tempo, and she told Destiny that her recorder tone was getting stronger every week, which was true. After class, she sat at the piano alone and played for a while, nothing for the students, just for herself, an old hymn her mother used to sing, her hands on the keys in the empty room. She did not cry, she was saving that. 2 blocks from Fairview Elementary, on Elvis Presley Boulevard, there was a medical building attached to Methodist South Hospital, where a cardiology practice occupied the second floor. On the morning of October 14th, a patient had an 11:30 appointment with Dr. Patricia, where that ran long, not because anything was wrong, but because Dr. Ware was thorough, and because the patient had questions, and because the patient's questions were always specific and patient and worth answering properly. The appointment ended just after 1 in the afternoon. The patient collected his jacket from the hook on the back of the door and his guitar case from the corner where he had set it, and thanked Dr. Ware by name, and walked out into the waiting room, and then into the elevator, and then out onto Elvis Presley Boulevard. It was a warm October afternoon, the kind Memphis produces in the second week of fall, the heat of summer backing off just enough to make the air feel like a gift. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, guitar case in hand, and looked at the street. He was not in a hurry. He had learned not to be in a hurry after the kind of appointment Dr. Ware had just given him, which had not been bad news, merely the news that attends a man of 67 who has lived the way he has lived and intends to keep living it. He started walking. He walked 2 blocks without particular destination. He passed the closed gas station. He passed a beauty supply shop with a handwritten sale sign in the window. He passed 3 children on bicycles who did not look at him. He was simply a large man in a deep royal blue jacquard patterned silk shirt, dark trousers, good shoes, carrying a guitar case on a warm October afternoon in South Memphis. Nothing about him announced anything. He heard the piano when he was still half a block away. He stopped. An old hymn, played slowly, without performance, the way you play something when you think no one is listening. The sound came through an open second-floor window of the brick school building on the corner. He looked at the window, he looked at the building. He read the sign, Fairview Elementary School. He stood on the sidewalk and listened for a full minute without moving. Then he walked to the front door. The school secretary, a woman named Barbara who had been at this desk for 19 years, looked up when the door opened. She saw a large man in a nice blue shirt with a guitar case and a visitor's expression, the look of someone who has arrived without an appointment and knows it. "Can I help you?" she said. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I heard someone playing piano from the street. I was wondering if I could listen for a little while." Barbara looked at him. She looked at the guitar case. She had a procedure for unannounced visitors that she followed without exception. "I'll need to call Principal Briggs," she said. "Of course," he said, and sat in the plastic chair beside the door and set the guitar case on his knees and waited. Briggs came down in 3 minutes. He shook the man's hand, noted the guitar case, and asked politely what his business was. "I heard piano from the street," the man said. "Old hymn, somebody up there plays with real feeling." He paused. "I'd like to meet them if that's all right." Briggs looked at him. He was about to say that the music room was between classes and Mrs. Ellis had a planning period and he couldn't simply bring unannounced visitors to staff members. He had his procedures. His hands were clasped behind his back. But something about the man's face gave him a moment's pause, the patience in it, the complete absence of anything to prove. "Can I ask your name, sir?" he said. The man told him. Briggs's hands came out from behind his back. Margaret Ellis was still at the piano when the knock came. She said come in without turning around, assuming it was Mr. Earl about the thermostat. The door opened. "Mrs. Ellis," Briggs said, and his voice had a quality she had never heard in it before. "You have a visitor." She turned. The large man in the royal blue shirt was standing in the doorway of her music room with a guitar case, and he was looking at the room, at the semicircle of chairs, the poster of Louis Armstrong, the cabinet of instruments, the donated guitar leaning against the wall, with an expression she would spend years trying to describe and eventually stop trying. "I heard you playing from the street," he said. "That was a beautiful hymn." Margaret Ellis stood up from the piano bench. She looked at him. She looked at Briggs in the doorway. Briggs gave her a small nod that she had no framework for. "Thank you," she said carefully. "Can I help you?" "Maybe," he said. He looked at the chairs. "May I sit down?" He sat in one of the student chairs, too small for him, but he settled into it with the ease of a man who has sat in all kinds of chairs. He set the guitar case across his knees. He looked at the room again. "How long have you been teaching here?" he said. 11 years, she said. He nodded. "And the program?" He gestured at the instruments in the cabinet. She looked at the cabinet. She had not yet told the students. She had not told anyone except the 2 colleagues she trusted. But something about the directness of the question, the absence of social padding around it, made her answer directly. "It's being cut," she said. "End of December." He was quiet for a moment. He looked at the crooked poster on the wall. "Music is the language of the soul." He looked at the xylophone with its 2 missing bars. He looked at the donated guitar against the wall. "These children," he said, "what ages?" 8 to 10 mostly, she said. He nodded slowly. "I was 8 when I first heard the blues," he said. "Heard it through a neighbor's wall in Itabena. I didn't know what it was. Just knew it went somewhere inside me that nothing else went." He paused. "Took me 59 years to understand that you never stop going to that place. You just learn the roads better." Margaret Ellis sat down on the piano bench. She looked at the man in the small chair. "What is your name?" she said. She asked it quietly. She was beginning to suspect, and she wanted to be wrong in the way you sometimes want to be wrong about something too large. He told her. She put her hand flat on the top of the piano and kept it there. "I have your record," she said. "Live at the Regal. My father gave it to me." "Good record," he said. 1964. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the door. The afternoon class would arrive in 12 minutes. 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds who did not yet know that December would be the end of this room for them. "Would you be here," she said, "when my next class comes in?" He looked at his watch. He thought about it with the genuine consideration of a man with places to be who is deciding to stay. "Yes," he said. The children arrived at 2:15. 21 of them, filing in the way children file into a familiar room, comfortable, a little loud, dropping bags, claiming chairs. They saw Mrs. Ellis at the piano, which was normal. They saw a large man in a blue shirt sitting in one of their chairs with a guitar case on his knees, which was not. They settled, they looked at him. "We have a guest today," Margaret said. She did not say his name yet. She looked at him. He stood up. He opened the guitar case and took out Lucille, the pitch-black Gibson ES 355, gold hardware catching the afternoon light, and the room went very quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when something enters them that is larger than the everyday. He settled the guitar across his lap. "How many of you," he said, "have heard the blues?" About half the hands went up, uncertain. "How many of you," he said, "have felt the blues?" Every hand went up, even the children who were not sure what they were raising their hand for. He smiled. "Then you already know music," he said. "The rest is just learning to say it out loud." He played. He played a slow, simple blues, simple enough for 8-year-old ears to follow, deep enough that the following went somewhere. He watched their faces while he played. A boy in the front row whose name he didn't know yet, small, serious, with large eyes and hands that were too big for his body, was watching his left hand with the focused attention of someone taking inventory. He played for 20 minutes. He answered questions. How long had he been playing? Did it hurt his fingers? Was Lucille her real name? Why did he call her Lucille? He showed Marcus how to hold the guitar properly, adjusting the boy's left thumb with 2 fingers. He played one note, then guided Marcus's hand into position and had him play the same note. And when Marcus hit it, the boy looked at his own hand with an expression of pure astonishment. At the end of class, he set Lucille back in her case and looked at Margaret Ellis. She looked at him. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a checkbook. He wrote quietly, tore the check out, and set it on the piano lid face down. "For the program," he said, "however you need to use it." Margaret looked at the check. She looked at him. "This is," she began. "It's enough," he said simply. He picked up the guitar case. He shook her hand. He nodded at the children, at Marcus especially, and walked to the door. In the doorway he stopped and looked back at the room one more time. The semicircle of chairs, the Louis Armstrong poster, the cabinet of instruments, the crooked sign on the wall. "Mrs. Ellis," he said. "Yes." "Don't let anybody tell you this room isn't necessary." He paused. "I know what it's like to be in a room like this when you're 8 years old. It changes everything." He left. Margaret Ellis stood at the piano for a moment after he was gone. Then she turned the check over. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at her students. "All right," she said. Her voice was steady. "From the top, scales." They played. 22 years later, in the spring of 2015, a musician named Marcus Webb released his first album. He was 31 years old, a guitarist from South Memphis who played blues the way blues is supposed to be played, with feeling that comes from somewhere specific, from rooms and streets and particular people on particular afternoons. The album was called Room 212. The liner notes explain the title in 2 sentences. The music room at Fairview Elementary was Room 212. A man visited once when I was 9 years old and showed me how to play one note. I've been playing that note ever since. He did not name the man in the liner notes. He didn't need to. On the day the album was released, Marcus drove to Fairview Elementary. The building was still there, still brick, still solid. He went to the principal's office, a different principal now, and asked if room 212 still existed. It did. It was still a music room. Different instruments, a newer piano, but the same room. The Louis Armstrong poster was gone, but someone had put up a new one. The mural on the hallway walls had been updated. He stood in the doorway of room 212 for a while without going in. He thought about a large man in a royal blue shirt sitting in a chair too small for him, holding a pitch-black guitar, asking 21 children how many of them had felt the blues. Every hand had gone up. He went back to his car and sat for a moment. Then he drove to Beale Street and played a set that night at a small club, and dedicated the first song to a music teacher named Margaret Ellis, and the second song to a man he had met once when he was 9 years old, who had shown him that one note played with complete feeling is worth more than 1,000 notes played without it. If there was a teacher who kept a door open for you when it should have been closed, a coach, a mentor, anyone who stayed when they didn't have to, drop their name in the comments. They deserve to be remembered. And which B.B. King song do you keep coming back to? Tell me. The blues was born out of hard times, but so was everything worth keeping. B.B. King.